Our speaker tonight is a naturopathic doctor based back east in Toronto, Ontario. He uses natural therapies to stimulate healing and wellness and is very passionate about addressing the root cause of ailments. The variety of treatments he works with include nutrition, herbal botanicals, homeopathy, and acupuncture. What we enjoy most about this educator is that he is continuously educating himself and provides current and valuable information that's easy to understand and really fun. So if you can all help me in welcoming Dr. Frank Silva.
Thank you, Lynn. And thank you for everyone for joining us tonight. I know it's a beautiful evening outside, so I do appreciate that you're spending your nice evening with us. We've got lots of fun and exciting things to talk about tonight. What we titled the presentation for tonight was Life Hacks. And the reason we called it Life Hacks is because a lot of times when you go to these, educational seminars or we're learning about some of these health conditions, sometimes it seems like it's a lot of doom and gloom. Sometimes we learn that we're a lot more sicker than we thought. So I wanted tonight to be positive. I wanted us to learn a lot about these life hacks, or these simple ways to supercharge our health, right? These simple ways that have maybe extraordinary results. Instead of working harder, I want all of us to be able to work smarter when it comes to our health. So some of the things we're going to talk about tonight when it comes to, how to be your best self or how to make these simple changes, we're going to talk a lot about things like sleep, and we're going to talk about inflammation and immunity and how all these things kind of get together and how all these things kind of change the way our bodies work. So without further ado, let's start with a good night, right? I always say a very good day starts with a great night, right? The quality of your day has a lot to do with the quality of your sleep or your evening. How you get ready for that day is sometimes the most important thing. Now, one of my mentors, one of the naturopathic doctors that I studied with, before she would treat any condition, whether it was digestion, whether it was your cholesterol or your hormones or your blood pressure, she would actually work on your sleep first, because she would always say nothing will change until your sleep gets better. And that's very true. Let's look at some of the issues first. The first thing we realize, and this is kind of sad but true, but mammals are kind of the only animal on the planet that actually sacrifice our sleep. We willingly stay up later than we should. We willingly wake up sometimes too earlier than we should. So one of the most simple things that heals us all, we're willing to bypass or forego for the sake of other things. Here's an interesting quote that Gandhi once said. He once said, "I have such an important day today that instead of meditating for 1 hour, I'm going to meditate for 2 hours." And what do? We do the opposite. I have such a busy day today that I can't get to sleep on time. And I have such a busy day today that I've got to wake up super early. Or I've got such a busy day today that I can't go to the gym, or I can't eat breakfast, or I can't do all these things that in fact we actually need more of when we have a busy, important day. So let's talk about why. The first thing we usually see is it's our lifestyle, right? Our lifestyle, whether we're too busy, whether we work different hours, whether our kids, are very demanding, whether it's the household chores or all sorts of other things that, believe it or not, actually prevent us from having a restful night's sleep. For others, it can be our jobs. We talked about family responsibilities. It could be relationships. These are some of the things that might affect our sleep. It could be physiological or psychological factors, right? It could be pain that stops you from sleeping. It could be an upset stomach that stops you from sleeping, or it could be psychological issues like stress or anxiety or all sorts of other things that prevent you from sleeping. And then here's the issue, right? It could be the stress, the thoughts, the anxiety. We've all sat in bed before and it seems like our brain can't seem to settle down. We keep thinking about all the important things we have to do tonight, tomorrow, or the people on our mind, or our family members, or all sorts of other things, right? So sometimes it's our brain that's overactive and keeping us up at night. And then sometimes it's our devices, right? Sometimes we're up all night on our smartphone, and maybe you see your partner with that blue light shining in their face, and you realize that they're not going to fall asleep as long as that blue light is shining in their face from their smartphone or their tablet or whatever else it might be. I saw this comic strip once that somebody was on there. You could see they're in bed and they're sitting on their laptop and they're typing away, and they say, "Oh, time for bed." So they close down their laptop and pull out their phone. Right? So we kind of do the same thing. It seems like we're staying up at night on these devices, and believe it or not, it affects your sleep. So here's what you'll notice. If your sleep is not well, if you're not getting that restful sleep, if you're not getting the quality and quantity of sleep that you need, these are some of the things you're going to notice. Yawning, right? No surprise. and it's contagious, right? If you see somebody yawn, it's very easy for it to make you yawn. Do you guys know why? Any idea why yawning is contagious, or why if you see somebody yawn, it might signal you to yawn also? It's actually a primal instinct, right? It's actually something that, what happened in the jungle. The lion or the king of the jungle, when they would yawn, it would be a signal for all the little cub lions to yawn as well, and that was kind of like the lion saying, time for bed, right? So it is a primal instinct. If you see somebody else yawn, it'll actually make you yawn as well. So it's kind of like a signal for bedtime. We see changes in our moods, right? Are you the happiest when you don't sleep? Not really. We're a little bit more short. We're a little bit more, in a rush, or we're a little bit more, a little bit less patience. We're easier to snap. We're easier to rush to mood changes. It could change your energy levels, right? It can make you more irritable. It could change the way you function at work, right? It might be harder to learn new tasks, or it might be harder to study, or it might be harder to have that stamina, whether it's mental or physical. It could change things like your appetite. It could change things like your cravings. So if you're not sleeping well, chances are you're not eating well either, right? So it does have profound effects. It's not just the time you use to relax and close your eyes. It's the time you use to refuel, rehydrate, or to replenish your body, to become stronger, to heal from all the things that happen throughout the day. So we got to give it more attention than it deserves. And then here's what happens. Here's the results, right? So it's not just about making it through those 8 or 9 hours of a good night's sleep. It's about the consequences, right? And those consequences can be emotional, right? It could be some of those feelings we experience, things like bad moods or not performing well at work. It could be low self-esteem. It could be changes in our appetites, or they could be clinical changes, right? It could mean that things like your blood pressure are off. It could mean that you put on more weight. It could mean that you might have conditions like ADD or ADHD. It might mean that you have chronic inflammation, right? So it is a bit more serious than we think, or we do need to pay more attention to it. So let's get to some strategies. And the first thing I want to say is sometimes there are no shortcuts, right? Sometimes we do have to put in the work. And this is especially important when it comes to sleep. So there are some changes that we're going to need to make if we want a good quality sleep, right? And a good quality sleep, what I tell my patients, is composed of 4 things, right? Easy to fall asleep, easy to stay asleep, you dream while you sleep, and you wake up refreshed. Those are kind of the 4 things that need to happen for you to have a good night's sleep. And one of those things I mentioned is dreaming. Does anybody know why it's important to dream while you sleep? I know a lot of people say, oh my gosh, I didn't get a good sleep because I was dreaming all night. That's actually a good thing, right? You should dream when you sleep, because dreaming is the last stage of a complete sleep cycle, right? In your sleep, you have about 4 cycles. You have stage 1 or phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, and each time you get deeper and deeper. And then the very last step, or the very last stage, is what we call REM sleep, rapid eye movement. That's when you dream. And that REM sleep is very close to consciousness. So you almost come back up to consciousness. After a dream, one of 2 things happens. Either you wake up, or you repeat that cycle again. So dreaming is the last stage of a sleep cycle, and each sleep cycle should take about 90 minutes, right? So how many dreams should you have in a night? At least 4, right? They don't have to be elaborate. You don't have to slay any dragons. You don't have to fly to Mars. But as long as there's something visual or something that, tickles your senses in there, that's a dream, right? A dream is when you touch base with your subconscious, right? A dream might be when you realize your fears or your ambitions or your goals, or things that you did or didn't accomplish throughout the day. So dreaming is a very important stage of sleeping, and it is a necessity for you to have a good night's sleep. If you do the opposite, if it feels like the lights went out and then the lights went on and you're awake and you feel like nothing happened throughout the night, you might not be getting the best quality of sleep, right? So here's some things that we can do to address that. So the very first thing, yes, believe it or not, you've got to turn off the screens. You've got to turn off the devices. You shouldn't fall asleep in front of the TV. You shouldn't be on your computer or on your iPhones or on your tablets at least 45 minutes before bed, right? And the reason is because those lights that are emitted from the TV or from your phone or from your device actually harm your pineal gland, where your melatonin is made. Has everyone heard of melatonin before? So melatonin is like your sleep hormone. We make melatonin when it's dark outside, right? So melatonin doesn't actually make you sleepy, but melatonin lets your body know that it's bedtime, right? Melatonin lets you know that it's, pardon? Oh, sorry.
They're talking here, so I just wanted to get another copy of this.
Oh, we might be short on a few copies of the presentation. We didn't have enough for everyone. It seems like a few more people showed up than we anticipated. If anybody didn't get a copy and does want one, if you write down your email address afterwards, we can send out an electronic copy. So melatonin, like I was saying before, is again not a hormone that makes you fall asleep. Believe it or not, you actually make melatonin, or the most of it, when you're already sleeping. So melatonin is what your body uses to kind of create this circadian rhythm, or this time clock in your body, right? We have a 24-hour time clock. Your body wants to know what time is time to sleep, when it's time to wake up, and that's what melatonin helps us to regulate. So when you make melatonin, your body knows that, okay, lights off, time to fall asleep. But you can only make melatonin when it's dark out. You can't make melatonin when it's light out. You can't make melatonin during the day, and you can't make melatonin when you're looking at your phone, or at the TV, or at your tablet, or your computer, or anything else like that. So you need to have the lights off in order to make melatonin. And when you make melatonin, it actually gives you the benefit of a good night's sleep. Now, melatonin isn't just for sleep. And I say this because a lot of us who perhaps have trouble sleeping, when we take melatonin, we don't only use it to help us to get that good sleep, we use melatonin for the benefits of sleep. Because when you have lots of melatonin, it actually helps to suppress cortisol. Does everybody know what cortisol is? Cortisol is your stress hormone, right? And if you make lots of melatonin at night, you actually help to shut off that stress hormone for at least 8 hours, which is very important, right? We don't want to be stressed all the time, at least for those 8 hours while we're trying to sleep. So if you make lots of melatonin at night, there's no cortisol being made. That stress hormone is actually being stockpiled for when your alarm clock goes off. And then you release all that stress hormone and you wake up fully energized, lots of energy. But if you don't have enough melatonin when you sleep, that cortisol can wake you up in the middle of the night, right? It can make you anxious in the middle of the night. It can make your heart race or give you palpitations in the middle of the night. So it's important to have melatonin while you sleep. Melatonin regulates your digestive system. Would you be surprised if I were to tell you the #1 treatment for acid reflux or heartburn, believe it or not, is actually melatonin? Even better than all of the antacid medications. It actually helps to fix the levels of acid in your stomach. Melatonin also helps to regulate hormone levels. It specifically regulates estrogen levels. Now, I say this because women who work shift work, there's been numerous studies done, women who work shift work, who maybe don't sleep at regular times of the day or regular times throughout the week, we find that their levels of breast cancer and ovarian cancer are about 40 to 70% higher than women who don't work shift work. And all of it has to do with melatonin, because melatonin regulates hormone levels. So, what's interesting is, we see a lot of these medications that are overprescribed. Things like antacid medications, things like birth control or fertility medications, right? Things that address your stress levels. Could it all have to do with melatonin levels and how you sleep? Absolutely. So if you're sleeping better, if you're making that melatonin or taking that melatonin, a lot of other things actually improve as well, right? So it's up to us in order to make some of those changes. So here's a few other tips that kind of go without saying. Go to bed when you're tired, right? All of us do this. We're tired, but we think, oh, I got to stay up for another hour. I got this important thing to do. Sleep is like a train. And if you miss that train, sometimes the next one doesn't come around for, another hour, another 2 hours, another 3 hours. So when the train shows up, make sure you jump on that train. I had a colleague of mine who was, I think they were traveling through somewhere in Asia. I don't really remember where it was. And they were super tired. They were jet lagged. They just got there and they were exhausted. And what they were trying to do was find a coffee shop, because they thought maybe if I got a bit of caffeine, I could, make it throughout the day. So everybody they found, they were asking them, where can I find some coffee? And nobody was able to help them until about the 5th or 6th person, they found them and they said, please, you've got to help me. Where can I find some coffee? I'm really tired. And what the person said to them was, go to bed, right? And sometimes that seems like the obvious answer, but it's true. When you're tired, go to bed, right? That's the easiest way for you to regulate your sleep. Create a routine, right? Your body doesn't like guessing. Your body doesn't like surprises. So try to stick to a routine and try to create a usual or a typical bedtime. If it's at 9 p.m. every night or 11 p.m. every night, try to be consistent with it. And also try to be consistent with your wake-up time, because then it's much easier for your body to stay on track. Your body likes when things are predictable, because then it can help you out. If you can't fall asleep, don't stay in bed, right? And I know this might sound surprising, but the truth is, if you're just laying there tossing and turning, sometimes we need that change of environment. Sometimes we need to get up, we need to have a glass of water, maybe we need to go to the washroom, maybe we need to change out of our pajamas into something more comfortable, and then try again, right? So if it's not working, change it up. And then of course, keep that bedroom quiet and dark, right? We always say this, turn off the TVs, turn off the lamps, turn off your devices. Even the light that comes from your alarm clock is enough to change the amount of melatonin that you're making. So it should be quiet and dark in your bedroom, and that's what we like to see. Now, here's another interesting thing about melatonin. Melatonin also regulates our not only our 24-hour clock, our circadian rhythms, but our monthly rhythms as well, right? And one of the ways that happens is with the moon, right? So the moon actually affects a lot of what happens in our body, or a lot of the timing that happens in our body. And that's why we know that menses, or menstrual cycles, menses is actually Greek and Latin for the moon, right? And we know that the moon, or the lunar cycle, affects a lot of our fertility rhythms as well. And we know that depending on the amount of light that we see at night from the moon, changes will happen in our hormonal cycles also, right? So pregnancy, when we say pregnancy is 9 months, it's actually 10 lunar cycles, right? A lunar cycle is about 28 days. 10 of those is 280 days. By coincidence, it's 9 months, but pregnancy is actually 10 lunar cycles. And a woman's menstrual cycle should follow the moon. And a lot of that has to do with the levels of melatonin you make that evening. When there's a full moon outside, there's lots of light at night. That's the one night that you don't make melatonin, you make cortisol. And for women, that usually lines up with ovulation, right? There's a reason why all the werewolves come out at the full moon, why everybody's a little bit wacky, because that's the night we don't make melatonin, right? And melatonin helps to regulate those hormones. So I'm going on a bit of a tangent. Let's get back on track. Let's come up with some options. The truth is, we're all unique. We're all individual. Is there a one-size-fits-all approach? Very rarely. But there are some simple strategies or some simple principles that we should all stick to. The truth is, when it comes to sleep, if you're not sleeping well, it might require more than one different type of treatment. Some of us may have tried melatonin before, and for some of us it works great. And for others, it made a little bit of a difference, but we need something else. So the truth is, don't be afraid to try a few things when it comes to your sleep. I like melatonin because it doesn't actually make you sleepy. Melatonin gives you the benefits of a good night's rest or a good night's sleep, so I think it's always something to consider, especially if you don't have good sleep, or if you're not sleeping at night, or if you don't have a regular sleep pattern. Because if you're not sleeping at night and if your sleep isn't predictable, if you work shift work, chances are you won't make that melatonin on your own. So we want to make sure we get the benefits of it. But there are other things as well. There's other natural health products aside from melatonin that also help us with sleep. Here's one that I really like. It's called, the name is kind of blurred in there, it's called Sweet Dreams. And what it has is a few other natural health ingredients that help us with sleep. Things like theanine, chamomile, and lemon balm. We've all taken these before, right? Especially chamomile and lemon balm. They might be in some of our favorite teas. And what's nice about these ingredients is, again, none of these make us sleepy. And I'll tell you why I think that's important. The majority of patients that I work with that have insomnia are actually already tired, right? They don't need anything to make them more tired. They actually need something to get them into that right state of mind for sleep. And that's what a lot of these ingredients do. My favorite in here is the theanine. Does anyone know where theanine comes from? Theanine is an amino acid, and it's usually found in green tea, right? So for anybody who enjoys green tea, one of the best things about it is the levels of theanine. Now, here's an interesting thing. We know that green tea has caffeine. But if we drink too many cups of green tea, it doesn't give us the jitters like having too many cups of coffee does, right? And that's because of the theanine. What theanine does is it actually helps your brain. It helps your brain to make a certain type of brain waves called alpha waves. And these alpha waves are the type of brain waves that we make whenever we do Tai Chi or yoga or meditation. How does that feel? It feels like we're in the zone. It feels like we're focused, like we're not distracted. We're not worried about where we gotta go or where we came from, who's late, what's for dinner, who's doing the laundry, who's picking up the kids. When we're in the zone, when we're making these alpha waves, we're thinking about what's happening right now. And unfortunately, that's not something that we're very good at doing. We're very good at multitasking. We're very good at juggling so many things in our mind. And it makes it hard for us to fall asleep at night, because we've all sat in bed before with that mind that's racing that won't settle down. And theanine is the quickest way to get your brain to focus, right? So it doesn't make you sleepy, but it helps you to focus. Helps you to think about one thing at a time. And if that one thing is sleep, Well, guess what? That's what you're going to accomplish. So theanine helps to prepare your mind for sleep. How fast does it work? Very quick. Usually about 5 to 10 minutes is what we expect to see. So you don't have to take theanine, or you don't have to take this Sweet Dreams formula half an hour before bedtime or an hour before bedtime. You only take it if you can't fall asleep, right? So you can keep it in your night table, and if you fall asleep, that's great. But if you don't, in 5 or 10 minutes, you will, right? Theanine will get you ready for sleep. It'll help to declutter your mind and get you into that right brain state, or that right state of mind. Now, the interesting thing is you can also use these ingredients during the day because they're not going to make you sleepy, right? You can take it if you're anxious or nervous, maybe about public speaking or a job interview or a first date. Maybe you get nervous when you get on an airplane or riding an elevator or before a doctor's appointment. These will, again, help to settle the brain, take away the jitters, right? Or if you wake up in the middle of the night. Here's where a lot of people don't really have options. If you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and you're startled and you can't fall back asleep, you can't take a sleeping pill. You can't take anything that's going to make you sleepy, or else you won't be able to wake up the next morning, or you'll feel groggy when you the right type of treatment for when you wake up in the middle of the night as well. Let's switch gears. Now, we're going to make a lot of connections tonight. We talked about sleep, but the other area I find that a lot of us don't address thoroughly enough is our digestive system, right? And you've all heard the saying, the way to a man's heart is through his stomach or through his tummy, and it's actually very true. We're going to learn a lot about how your digestive system works and how it incorporates all of these issues. Now, when we talk about our digestive system, it's an evolution, right? It changes as we age. The digestive system in a child or in an infant is very different than in an adult, right? And the difference is how these bacteria play, or how these bacteria in your digestive system come into play. Any idea how much bacteria you have in your gut right now? Any guesses?
Many billions.
Millions?
Billions.
Billions?
Trillions.
Trillions? Absolutely. You have about 4 trillion bacteria in your gut right now. You're carrying about 3 or 4 pounds of bacteria right now. There's more bacteria in your stomach than there is stars in the skies. So there's lots of bacteria in your stomach, and we want it there. We want the good bacteria, not the bad ones. So there is a big difference between what should be there and what shouldn't be there. Now, whenever I talk about our digestive system, the easiest way to understand it is think of it as a long tube from your mouth to your butt. That's all it is. Very simple, right? Your digestive system starts at your lips. It includes your mouth, your throat, your esophagus, your stomach, your large, small intestine, your rectum, your colon, and that's it, right? One long tube, that's all it is. Any idea how long it is? 15 feet? What do you guys think? More or less? More? 40 feet? I've heard a football field, I've heard a kilometer. The truth is, it's about 5 times your body height. So if you're, or 6 times your body height, sorry. If you're about 5 feet tall, it should be about 30 feet long. If you're 6 feet tall, it's going to be about 36 feet long. Now, who would have a longer digestive system, men or women? We're going to play Battle of the Sexes tonight. Who says men? Okay, and who says women? And who says men? And who says women? Okay, you guys are right, it's actually women. Women have a small intestine that's about 1 foot longer than men's, right? And the small intestine is where you do a lot of your absorption. So for women, you get an extra advantage when it comes to absorbing nutrients. And that's probably very important during pregnancy and nursing. So that's one of the reasons why that happens. Now, I told you it's like a long tube from your mouth to your butt. I want you to think of it as the main highway or the main street in town. And I say this because in any town, regardless if it's Toronto where I'm from or here in Victoria, any town where the main street is located is where all the important businesses are. Right on Main Street, you might have the post office, the hardware store, the health food store, right? You might have the bank, you might have the school and the library and all the other important functions. And that's just like your digestive system, because believe it or not, all of the important functions in your body start or originate or have something to do with that digestive highway. So they're actually located all along that digestive strip or that digestive highway. Now, on Main Street, the other thing we have to do is we have to build parking spots, because we need to be able to drive there. We need to be able to park our cars so that we can shop at those businesses or that we can work there to keep them functioning. And in your digestive system, you also have parking spots for bacteria. Because when bacteria park in your gut, when they stick onto your gut, they carry out a lot of those important functions. We're going to learn about what they do. And by default, they actually crowd out all the bad bacteria. So that if you occupy all those parking spots, there's a very low chance that the bad bacteria are going to find anywhere to stick or anywhere to attach onto, and they won't be able to cause any trouble or any infections. They're going to keep on driving through town. So it's very important for us to keep that balance just right. Because when we don't, here's what happens. If you don't have the right balance of good and bad bacteria, you can expect to see a lot of dis-ease or disharmony when it comes to your digestive system. You might find upset stomachs. You might be bloated, right? You might have gurgles. You might have pain in your stomach. You might have lower energy. If you're not absorbing your nutrients, right, you're not going to have the energy to make it throughout the day. You might notice that you get sick more often, right? If you're not crowding out the bad bacteria, chances are you're going to get sick more often than everyone else. Or you're going to have a harder time recouping from that illness while everyone else is getting better faster. It might change your mood, and believe it or not, it'll even change your skin. And I say it'll change your skin because guess what? The skin on the outside of your body is actually the same as the skin on the inside of your body. When a fetus or when a baby is developing, it actually looks like a straw. Inside of the womb, it looks like a straw, and the material on the outside is the same as the material on the inside. If you've got a skin condition on the outside of your body, like eczema or psoriasis, you should see what it looks like on the inside, right? Even worse. That's where it starts. So your digestion actually has a lot to do with your skin as well. And it has a lot to do with inflammation, right? So inflammation, we're going to talk a little bit more as we move on through here. But for now, we realize that inflammation may not be our friend, right? Inflammation might lead to other chronic health conditions. Anything that ends with an itis, whether it's arthritis or thyroiditis or colitis, has inflammation. So it's not always a good thing. Where does that inflammation come from? Well, a few things. Number one, it's usually when your immune system is overactive. When your immune system is making lots of inflammation, it's depositing in your body. When we've got all that inflammation, guess what? It changes the way your gut works, right? It makes your gut unhappy, right? Or we change the levels of those good and bad bacteria. When that happens, we actually lose the ability to control inflammation. So now we're not able to regulate it. And now it escalates out of control. That's what leads to chronic disease. And then when you have chronic disease, guess what? You make inflammation. And when you have inflammation, we continue to go around and around that cycle. So here we start to see where inflammation can start to impact your digestive system, your immune system, your sleep, and all of these other cycles that happen inside of your body. Here's the other interesting thing. A lot of researchers even call your digestive system your second brain, right? We have our primary brain, which we think is the central processing system of our body. But the truth is, you actually have a second brain. We call it the enteric nervous system. That's all of those nerves that are actually in your digestive system. And the truth is, you have over 100 billion different nervous cells lining your digestive system. So the truth is, your brain and your stomach actually do communicate. It's not a one-way message, it's actually a two-way message. They talk back and forth. And that's why your gut, right, or the brain in your gut controls things like your digestion, your mood, your health, even the way you think, right? A lot of us say we think with our gut. It's actually true. Or for people who have said they have a gut feeling, we actually know that's something that's true and correct, right? We know that there's a lot of things that are in common with your brain and with your gut, right? All of these hormones, your happy hormones, actually start off in your gut. A lot of the hormones that we miss when we have depression, like serotonin and dopamine, these actually originate or are largely present inside of your gut. So the truth is, your digestion has a lot to do with the way you feel and the way you think and the way you act, right? We see the behavioral effects, right? Things like the way we feel, our stress response, our appetite, our energy, our sexuality, our libido, things like how we control those functions, whether it's our bowel tone, whether it's our digestion, whether it's the way things move throughout your digestive system, and then of course how we digest and everything else that happens as well. And a lot of that is that communication between your brain and your gut. So it is a bit more complex than we think. And like I said before, don't forget that the majority of your immune system actually lives in your gut, right? More than 70% of your immune system, what you use to fight off germs and viruses and bacteria and infections, is actually located in your gut. So if your gut isn't happy, if your digestive system is off, everything is off, right? We have to take better care of our digestive system. And all of that happy hormone, your serotonin, and about half of your dopamine, which is your pleasure hormone. Dopamine is the one that gives us the reward or the benefits, or that makes us feel better, is actually located in your gut, right? So the truth is, in order to feel better, you gotta eat better, and you gotta digest better, and you gotta keep your gut healthy. How do we do that? Probiotics, right? And I know probiotics we talk about often, and we talk about these probiotics as these healthy bacteria. Now, it never fails. Whenever we talk about probiotics, everybody always tells me, or some people tell me, yes, and that's why I eat my yogurt every day. And I'm gonna tell you that you're probably not getting the best strains of probiotics in your yogurt. So I hope I'm not breaking anybody's, or I hope I'm not breaking anybody's spirit here. I hope I'm not turning you against the yogurt industry. But the truth is, yes, the yogurt industry may have made these probiotics popular and famous, but they never use the right types, right? And I say this because there's so many different types of these healthy bacteria, and they're not all beneficial, right? A lot of them are friendly, but only a very few select ones are actually therapeutic or beneficial, right? And each one plays a different role, right? There's so many different strains of probiotics, just like there would be so many different, let's say, species of dogs. Would you use every dog for the same task, right? Would a Chihuahua make a great guard dog? Probably not, right? You know, would you use, you know, I'm not too up to date on all the species of dogs, but you can see that each one of them has different characteristics or different things that they would excel at. And unfortunately, the strains of probiotics in your yogurt aren't studied for all the things that we're talking about tonight, right? Unfortunately, a lot of the strains in your yogurt do not even come from humans, or they're not the types of strains that you would want in your body. They come from other animals. Some of them you would be frightened to see crawling across your living room or your kitchen. I'll leave it at that. But unfortunately, marketing and these TV commercials make us think that these probiotics in your yogurt are super healthy. They come up with really creative names for them. They make you think that they're going to make you regular, right? Regularis is one of the ones that they call it. And that's kind of a made-up strain of probiotic. The truth is, it doesn't have the same beneficial strains. Let me explain. When we talk about your digestive system, remember I told you it was like a highway or like a road from your mouth to your butt? That's exactly what it is. Now, here's one question for you guys. How long does it take you to drive along that digestive highway from your mouth to your butt? What I'm trying to say is, if you were to eat something, how long would it take for it to come out on the other side? And we can measure this. If you ever eat corn, you can see what it looks like when it comes out on the other side. Or beet. How long after would you expect to see it?
8 hours.
8 hours?
6 to 8 hours.
6 to 8 hours? I hear all sorts of numbers. There's a big range, right? It does depend on the type of food, but it should be about 12 to 24 hours. That's what we call transit time, right? Transit time is how long it takes for food to travel through your digestive system. If it takes less than 12 hours, if it's fast, that's actually not a good thing. It means you're a speed demon. You drive too fast. You're not giving your body enough time to absorb the nutrients in your meals. And if it's longer than 24 hours, well, that's not a good thing either, because now there's a traffic jam. Now there's a right? or congestion, and things aren't exiting in a timely manner. And it's kind of like forgetting to put out the garbage on garbage day, right? If you forget to put out the garbage and you gotta hold on to it for another week, it's not so good, right? So I tell my patients every day, don't forget to put out the garbage, right? You've got to have a daily bowel movement. And I say this because when you go back to probiotics and the strains in your yogurt, the majority of them actually don't have the therapeutic benefits for your digestion and for your skin and for your bladder and for all these other things. What they do, or what they're designed to do, is to speed up your transit time, right? So the very popular one in that green brand of yogurt, the BL Regularis, when we study the effects, you know what it does? The only thing it does is it speeds up your transit time. Instead of being 12 to 24 hours, it's more like 8 to 12 hours. That's too fast. Or what else do we call that? We call that a laxative. Anything that speeds up your transit time is a laxative. But we fall for it, right? Because what happens is Shakira goes on TV, she tells you to take this yogurt twice a day for 2 weeks, and we do it. And guess what? When you take a laxative twice a day, you poop all the time, right? You go to the bathroom very regularly and you think, oh my gosh, this yogurt is changing my life. And 2 weeks later, when you run out of it, you stop. And guess what happens when you stop a laxative cold turkey after 2 weeks? You don't go to the bathroom anymore. And we think, I knew it. That yogurt, it changed my life. And if I don't have the yogurt, I don't go to the bathroom. Right? So we think, yes, I know it. It's these probiotics, they fix me. When in fact, you've been taking a laxative that comes from rodent poop, right, is where they source it from. So probably not the best way to get your probiotics, right? Oops, maybe I wasn't supposed to say that. So maybe not the best way to get your probiotics. The truth is, when you guys come here to Health Essentials, the probiotics here that you find are the therapeutic strains, right? These are the ones that are tested. These are the ones that have a therapeutic effect, that don't speed up your transit time, that don't make you poop when your body doesn't want to, but help to give you all the other benefits of these healthy bacteria, right? And the truth is, they're not all the same. Many different strains are known for different things. And what's really important is to know exactly what strains of bacteria you're getting. And I say this because there are very few strains that have been through the ringer, that have been tested for those therapeutic benefits. And this is one that I'm a big fan of. It's called Lactobacillus plantarum, and the specific subtype is 299V. Now, this is a very important strain because this is a human strain, right? What that means is this is the strain that humans use. This is a strain that's naturally found in our bodies. It doesn't come from other animals. It's going to give us the benefits that we expect to see. What we like about it is it's safe in adults and children. It's been studied over the last 25 years. There's been over 75 human clinical trials on it. So we have a really good idea of what it does. We know how to take it, when to take it, why to take it. We know it withstands the acidic pH in your stomach. When you eat a meal, you make lots of acid in your stomach to help you digest. And that acid is actually meant to destroy bacteria and all sorts of other things. So a lot of probiotics actually don't survive the pH in your stomach, but this is one of the few strains that does. It helps your stomach to make mucus, which probably doesn't sound like a fun thing. If I told you all, guess what, everybody's getting more mucus, you would think, no, I don't want to cough up phlegm and blow my nose. But that's not the type of mucus. This is intestinal mucus. We like intestinal mucus because in your stomach, when you eat dinner, you make lots of acid. Your pH goes down to a 2.0. That's very acidic. That's strong enough to burn a hole through this table. The only reason it doesn't burn a hole through your stomach is because of that mucus. So if you've got enough, you can reduce the irritation in your stomach. And when it's thick enough, it works like flypaper. It's very sticky. So if a bacteria is trying to create an infection like E. coli or H. pylori, if you've got enough mucus, it's actually going to get stuck, and then you can slough off a layer and spit it out of the body. So we like intestinal mucus. This strain also nourishes your intestinal system by making short-chain fats, which are the premium fuel supply for your intestinal cells as well. So it makes everything stronger.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
What is the source of that?
Okay, the source of that L. plantarum 299V, it's actually a human strain bacteria, so it's actually found in your...
Comes from the human body?
It comes from the human
Well,
body.
how do they harvest it then?
Oh, very simple. So what they do is kind of like when you do a gastroscope, right? When they insert a tube into your stomach,
Yes.
they go to your small intestine, they do a little swab, they pull it out, and then they culture it on a potato starch medium. So it's actually a bacteria that they take from your digestive system. It's not from, it's not from any other animal. It's not from, any unwilling participants. It's healthy volunteers who go into a lab, just like giving your blood, you give your bacteria.
Okay.
Yeah. So here's a few other things that it does. And the reason we thought we'd highlight this is because most other probiotics or most other therapeutic probiotics don't do these things. This particular strain also regulates your cholesterol levels, including your total cholesterol and your LDL, or your bad cholesterol. It actually helps to reduce inflammation. Remember how bad inflammation can be in your gut? You want a probiotic that reduces that inflammation. It actually helps to strengthen your immune system, so you do a better job at fighting the nasty germs and bugs. And it increases your absorption of nutrients. In this study, they actually looked at iron. And what they found was people who took this strain of probiotic at the right dose, their iron absorption within 3 days, it tripled, right? This is important because for a lot of us, our iron levels are low. No matter what we do, we can't seem to get it to increase. Even when we eat steak, even when we take our iron supplements and we do all these other things, the problem isn't with how much iron we're taking in, the problem is with absorption, right? If your small intestine isn't doing well, you're not absorbing well, your iron levels won't change no matter what you do. So the right strain of probiotic will heal your gut so that you can actually absorb better, and that's where you see the difference. So this is that strain of probiotic. It's in a product called Integris, and what's interesting is you'll actually find it in two different strengths, 20 billion and 30 billion. I know it doesn't sound like a lot because when you look downstairs and you see probiotics, some of them say 50 billion, 100 billion, right? Because they're made up with 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 different strains. This is actually just one strain of probiotic, right? So it's actually the highest single strain probiotic that you're gonna find, right? And the truth is sometimes you don't need every type of bacteria, you just need the right one, right? Sometimes when you're building your house, you need a plumber and an electrician and a carpenter and a roofer and somebody who's gonna paint and put in the windows and put in the tiles, but they don't always show up on the same day, right? Sometimes we just need the electrician. Sometimes we just need the carpenter. So the same is true with your probiotics. You don't always need every bacteria to show up to the party. You just need one, right? The right one that's going to do all those important things for you. So it's not the only way to take your probiotics, but it is an important strategy or a different way for you to consider taking your probiotic. Now, I told you that there's two different strains. The very first one, the 20 billion, is important for all those ordinary things, right? After you take an antibiotic, you want to replenish bacteria. Right after you've been sick, if you want to regulate your digestive system, if you want to strengthen your immune system, if you want to help with your absorption of nutrients, you would take 20 billion of this strain of bacteria. But even when everything is going well, you still need probiotics. I'll tell you why. We never consider probiotics until everything's wrong, right? We never think about taking probiotics until we've been constipated, or until we have diarrhea, or until we're bloated and we have cramps and indigestion and everything else. The truth is there's many things you do every single day to actually decrease the bacteria in your stomach. How many of us like garlic? Okay, garlic kills bacteria, not just the bad ones, but the good ones. How many of us may have taken oregano oil during the cold and flu season? Okay, it kills bacteria, right? Not just the bad ones, but also the good ones. How many of us like alcohol? Okay, you don't have to put your hands up, I know who you are. Alcohol kills bacteria, right? How many of us like spicy foods? Spicy foods also kill bacteria. So believe it or not, there's a lot of things we do on a daily basis that actually decrease the levels of bacteria we have in our gut. And we don't realize it until it's too late. So I would tell you, even when everything's going well, you still need to make sure that you're getting your probiotics. Now, sometimes things get really bad, right? And really bad, I would say, is probably like IBS. IBS might be Crohn's, colitis, irritable bowel disease, all sorts of weird things. Or it could even be something that's unexplained. Yes?
What about celiac disease?
Or celiac disease, right? It doesn't fall under IBS, but it is closely related.
I'm just wondering which would be a good probiotic for celiac disease.
Yeah, well, what's interesting with celiac disease is, this is kind of relating, remember when we talked about low iron levels and not absorbing it? What's interesting is when we see low iron levels, it's usually an indicator for us to look for celiac disease, right? Why? Because people with celiac disease, when they eat gluten, it actually destroys a portion of their small intestine, the same part where you actually absorb iron, right? So if you have celiac disease and you eat gluten, you damage your small intestine, you stop absorbing iron. So if your iron levels are low, we screen for celiac disease to see if that's the reason why it happens. And although celiac disease, you have to eliminate gluten, you can't do it, there's other things we can do to heal this situation. You still need to heal your gut, and you still need to fix the damage that's been done. So, yes?
Would you know if taking probiotics is safe during pregnancy?
Is taking probiotics safe during pregnancy? Absolutely, right? Absolutely. You need probiotics at any stage, right? During pregnancy, during nursing, during all stages of health. There really isn't, I can't think of a good time where you wouldn't take probiotics other than when you're taking an antibiotic. That would probably be the only time. So IBS, like we said before, could be Crohn's, colitis, could be something really severe, or it could just mean that something's happening with your bowels and we have no idea what it is. But guess what? IBS is very common in Canada. Right now, about 5 million Canadians have IBS. The unfortunate thing is we don't know who they are because it's not obvious, right? There could be about half a dozen of us here tonight that have IBS and you wouldn't even know who they are because it's not obvious, right? It's not visible. Think about something a little bit more obvious like arthritis, right? We can pick out who the people with arthritis are. They might have a cane or an assistive device, or they might walk slow or with a limp or with an impairment. There's about 6 million Canadians with arthritis. So actually there's way more Canadians with IBS, and it's actually largely undiagnosed. So unfortunately, it's a little bit more trickier than we think. Canada ranks among one of the top 3 or the top 3 highest nations with the amount of patients with IBS. Not something we're proud of, but something that we need to take better care of. So IBS is probably the worst case scenario we can think of. And that's why they wanted to make sure that if this probiotic worked for the simple things, what would it do for IBS? So here's what they found. When they did the studies in patients with IBS, When they took 30 billion of this strain, here's what they found. Every single person in every single study they've done it over and over, they always see their pain decrease. Everyone with IBS who takes this strain at 30 billion sees their pain improve. 95% of them see all their other symptoms change, including cramping, bloating, gas, indigestion, diarrhea. The quality, the consistency, and the frequency of their bowel movements also improve. So that's why this is actually the best proven strain of probiotic for IBS or any severe bowel condition. It actually says it right on the box. And the only reason it says that is because Health Canada granted that approval. They looked through the research and they confirmed that this is the strain of probiotic you use for IBS, right? So we know that it's strong enough for the most severe conditions, and if you use a little bit less, it's even great for the everyday stuff that you would use your probiotic for. So that's why we like it a lot. Now, one other thing that I want you guys to consider, we're going to go back to inflammation, right? And whenever we talk about inflammation, it seems like curcumin goes hand in hand. Who's never used curcumin before? Okay, a lot of us are familiar with it because we might have cooked with it, we might have used it as a spice, as a flavoring agent, but probably the best thing we figured out how to do with it was use it as a medicine, because curcumin has tremendous medicinal value. I'll tell you what it does. It might take us all day to explain what curcumin does, so let's just talk about the simple nuts and bolts. Here's what it boils down to. Curcumin is an antioxidant and an anti-inflammatory. Very simple, but very powerful. I'll tell you why. When you think of what these two concepts are, or what kind of a role they play in your health, it actually is much more of a big deal. When you think about antioxidants, I want you to think about what we're using them for. We're using antioxidants to combat oxidation. What is oxidation? What happens to metal when it oxidizes? It turns to rust. So when we use antioxidants, we're actually using rust inhibitors, because we don't want to see rust in our joints, or in our heart, or in our lungs, or in our liver, or in our tissues, or in our muscles, or anywhere else. So you need antioxidants for good health. You got to stop the rust from forming in all those parts of your body. When we talk about inflammation, we talked about chronic health issues, and it doesn't seem like there's a chronic health issue that doesn't have inflammation involved. So guess what? If you take care of the inflammation and you take care of the oxidation, you're doing a world of good. You're preventing or treating a lot of those chronic health issues that we suffer from. And the best thing with curcumin is it does both, right? It's a whole body anti-inflammatory. It's a whole body antioxidant. You might have just used it for your joints or your muscles, but believe it or not, it was also helping your brain and your heart and your liver and everything else.
I have a question.
Yes.
Turmeric contains curcumin.
Aha.
Now the curcumin that's extracted out of the turmeric, where does it come from? What
Okay.
country?
Very good question. So you might have heard turmeric and curcumin being used interchangeably, right? So here's the full answer. Turmeric is the whole root, right? You might have cooked with it before. You see it in your grocery store. It's got this thick skin. It looks like ginger on the outside. If you slice it open, it's rich orange or dark orange and almost like a red pigment. So that's your turmeric. Curcumin is the medicinal extract that we take out of there. So curcumin is the part of turmeric that has those anti-inflammatory properties, those pain relief properties. It takes a lot of turmeric to get a little bit of curcumin. Only about 2% of turmeric is actually curcumin. So if we try to compare curcumin to turmeric, it's a dramatic difference. You've got to take a lot of turmeric to get a little bit of curcumin. I say this because if you grew up on the other side of the world and you ate turmeric ever since you were a little baby, you've had lots of this anti-inflammatory benefits stockpiling in your body. But if you grew up here in North America and you turn 45 years old and you realize, oh, you know what, my back's a little bit sore. I should probably put some turmeric in my cooking. It's going to take a lot of turmeric, right? So a lot of us, we need to play catch up. We need to make up for lost time, and that's why we use the extract known as curcumin, right? So that's kind of the difference. Yes?
If you're having turmeric regularly, like, is there anything like too much?
Not at all.
You put
I
it in
think
your
it's
shakes and cooking and everything.
Yeah, I would actually tell you to do both. I wouldn't say don't do turmeric. I would say absolutely take turmeric every single day, right? You can use it in your cooking, in your stews, you can use it in your shakes. A lot of people make what's called a turmeric latte, where you take your favorite dairy beverage with turmeric and you make kind of like a tea out of it or a latte out of it. So absolutely, turmeric is something you can use every day in your cooking. But if you really want the full benefits out of it, sometimes we have to use that curcumin, the high-powered concentrate. So curcumin helps us with all sorts of things, right? We used to think of it just for arthritis because before the age of all these research studies, like 100 years ago, when we weren't doing randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled studies, we would try curcumin and see what we noticed, right? And what would happen is somebody would say, oh, if you've got pain, try curcumin, and guess what? Your pain would get better, right? Or it would help with things like arthritis. And then we started to realize, hey, you know what? Not only did it help my knees, but it also helped my digestion. Or it also regulated my blood pressure, or it also helped with my breathing, or it helped with my sleep and my skin and all these other things. And we quickly realized that curcumin doesn't just work in your joints, it deals with inflammation and oxidation in all parts of your body, even in your brain. So that's why some of the new studies are being used for things like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, places where we usually don't think of inflammation or oxidation. So curcumin has tremendous medicinal value. It's been helping us with all sorts of things, but there's a catch. So here's the bad news. The problem with curcumin is it's hard to absorb, right? The biggest problem with curcumin is the absorption isn't the best. So for some of us, we've taken curcumin, we've taken a lot of it, and we didn't really notice anything, or we didn't really see the benefits that we expected to see, because we probably didn't absorb as much as we should have, or what we thought we would have. And I'll tell you why curcumin is harder to absorb. It's usually because it's a fat-soluble nutrient, right? So what that means is your body treats curcumin like fat, right? Like olive oil, or like fish oil, or like another vitamin like CoQ10. When these are fat-soluble nutrients, your body needs to treat it like a fat. And here's what your body needs to do in order to absorb a nutrient from your fats. A couple things. It needs to take that large oily molecule because it's too big, and it needs to break it down into the right size and shape so that it can travel across those little hairs on your small intestine. Once it does that, now it's in your bloodstream, and now you can get the value of curcumin. But let's go through that process. There's 3 things that need to happen for you to absorb curcumin. Number 1 is you need to mix it with bile. Where does bile come from? Gallbladder, right? You actually make it in your liver, but you store it, you store it in your gallbladder, and then when you eat a meal, you release all of that bile into your stomach so that you can break down fats into medium-sized particles. That's step number 1. Step number 2 is stomach acid, right? When you eat a meal, you make lots of stomach acid. You use that stomach acid to break down medium-sized fats into even smaller pieces. And then one more step, you actually need a digestive enzyme, this one here called lipase, which breaks down lipids, in order to break it down into finer, small particles so that it can travel across your small intestine. Simple and easy. I'm sure most of us can do this, except for when something is missing. So let's go back again. Yes.
Yeah.
So what happens if you're missing a gallbladder?
Yeah,
Well,
what happens?
if you're missing a gallbladder, you can't absorb curcumin because you're not going to store all that bile and release it into your stomach. So believe it or not, if you're missing a gallbladder, and there's probably more of us than we think because it's one of the most common surgeries in North America, you're probably not digesting your fats very well, and you're not absorbing your curcumin. Now, let me digress. We talk about poop a lot, right? We can learn a lot about our poop. When you go to the bathroom, I think we should all look at our poop, right? There's a lot of information it tells us. What do you think you would expect to see in your poop, or what do you think you would notice about it if you weren't digesting your fats?
Like oils or?
They get like greasy.
Oily, greasy? Yeah, what else?
Lighter in color.
Pardon?
Lighter.
Lighter in color. Yes, what else?
Solid.
Not solid? Do you think it would sink or float? It would float, right?
Yeah.
Because oil floats on water.
Yeah.
So, I don't want you guys all to rush to the bathroom at once, but later on, when you have a bowel movement, I want you guys to pay attention. And if your stools float, it actually tells you that you don't absorb fats very well, right? So there's something very important to take a look at. You want to make sure that your bowel movements sink, or at least don't float on the surface. And that'll tell you how well you absorb your fats. So yes, if you don't have bile, or if you don't have a gallbladder, you're not absorbing it very well. Yes?
What if you, could you take it with like an enzyme?
Aha, okay, so now you're thinking. Yes. So if you don't have a gallbladder, you need to take bile as a supplement or other enzymes to help break down your fats.
So you could take the curcumin with the digestive enzyme?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that would help absorb it?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. Very good strategy. The other thing we talked about was stomach acid. Who wouldn't have enough stomach acid? Any medications that might change that? Antacids, right? So what if you're taking Tums or Rolaids? What if you're taking Pepcid or Tecta or Zantac because you get heartburn? Well, guess what? When you get rid of that stomach acid, you decrease your absorption, right? You don't absorb very well. You don't break down nutrients very well, right? Now, here's the interesting thing. The majority of patients I see with heartburn actually don't have enough stomach acid.